Ever make mistakes in life? Let's make them birds. Yeah, they're birds now. A quote by famous Air Force Sergeant Bob Ross. Hello, everyone. It is Mike Levin on Friday, February 12th, 2021. And today I will continue my ongoing series of Python on Windows 10 hardware today. When we left off, I had demonstrated installing it through the Microsoft Store, which is a very easy story today. Actually, you install it through the command line by starting to type Python. I talked about subsystems and virtual machines and showed you my version of Linux called Levinux and how it relates to what we're going to be doing over here. And on this video, I will be showing you the Anaconda install. This is a weird one because I'll probably pause recording in the middle. There's so much to it. Now I'm going to go over to my notebook for a second to show you what's on my mind. I am upgrading my Windows right now since it's a new laptop. I was on version 1909 and my Windows update told me there was a new version available, 2021-02 cumulative update. And I'm not going to restart now. I'm going to dive into the video and I'll restart on my own time, but just letting you know that I'm doing that because all the magic fairy dust of the Windows subsystem for Linux occurs in that upgrade, particularly the 2 part of that. They re-architected quite a bit of the system to run in virtual machine mode using hardware hypervisor virtualization, hardware level virtualization, let's say. And this is a priority because I want to get this journal here that I'm keeping in Notebook into Vim on my old environment. Yeah, there's lots of ways to get Vim on Windows, but that is not my preferred environment. Those who follow me know the journaling style I like to do. I want that here ASAP. So we move on to Anaconda. And as I was getting ready to start the Anaconda download and Googled on Anaconda, I thought to go over and check my YouTube channel for the performance on the videos yesterday. And the anachronist says, none of this works for my workplace, the this being these 3 choices I'm laying out. They don't want you to use Windows Store. Understandable. I'll show you that in my response. Anaconda now requires government/commercial users to arrange a big license, thousands of dollars per month for a company license. And then finally, virtualization also requires a whole rigmarole. See, there are many security considerations. Well, before I give my answer, I'll just show you what I typed back because, yeah, this guy definitely is in a locked down situation. You know, while it's less than optimal, you can always install Python from its most official source, which is python.org. The body that governs Python. It's not beholden to any vendors. Very few strings attached. It's a true free and open source programming platform, which is part of one of its many appeals. So if you have issues with your organization not liking things from the from the Microsoft Store, you can always download it here. See, and that's fine. Why wouldn't you download it from the web store? Well, because Microsoft can always auto-upgrade things installed from the store. That's just part of their architecture of the way the store works. If you install from the store, they can upgrade underneath of you. And a lot of organizations don't like that. Same with a Mac store. The story on the consumer-facing proprietary operating systems is very similar here between Mac and Windows. The Mac world doesn't have it much better. The only solution is really to run a Linux laptop, which is becoming more and more popular Chrome OS is even a step in that direction. Anyway, regarding the Anaconda licensing, I'll point out, as I'm doing right now, that it's only, only used by individual hobbyists, students, universities, nonprofit organizations, or businesses with less than 200 employees are allowed to use it free. I can definitely sympathize with people who are used to using it in other contexts suddenly facing new terms of service, because after he wrote that, I went over here to the anaconda.com site, searched their FAQs about their recent changes and how do you define commercial usage, and this is where I lifted the text from for my reply. And then finally it goes on regarding virtual machines. The Windows subsystem for Linux 2 in particular uses hardware level virtualization. It's a hypervisor. It's an Intel thing. It's also an AMD Ryzen thing. They all have their versions of it, and it's able to be turned on and off in BIOS, and turning it off in BIOS and turning your computer into a singleton thing not capable of these subsystem tricks is so totally kosher. There's nothing wrong with it. You're just walking away from the ability to do things with your machine that it's capable of. That helps in productivity. Having a master operating system, which is very, very, very tiny. These hypervisors don't even qualify as operating systems. Managing these other resource allocation blocks, which themselves are operating systems, in the way that server farms and the cloud do commonly, is now something that's done on our individual hardware level. And that's what the Windows subsystem for Linux over here at the bottom in purple is doing. So, I'm asking him if he's at the kind of organization that has to have hardened equipment, which they exist. And the equivalent question, can you use containers? Because there's a blurred line between what is virtualization and what is just swapping out where your operating system is loading from, with the old Unix ch root trick that's being touted and popularized these days so much as Docker and Kubernetes and all these container technologies, which in spirit have been around forever. The side-by-side technology with virtualization, whereas virtualization really does touch the hardware and does all sorts of tricks there to manage memory and isolate and contain runtimes. Containerization is really interesting because it's like, nope, get your files from over there, and it can be done in an instant with much less hardware proprietary support. Anyway, that's kind of a tangent, but I'm answering this guy's questions, which is like completely legitimate. So keep that in mind as I do my Anaconda install, which I might as well start now. I'm probably going to do pause on my screen capture software, so you don't have to wait through any of this. But now that we're at the Anaconda site, well, my first search here, right? So I'm going to do what you do. Search on the word Anaconda. If you didn't catch that, I actually went to Google. I searched on the word Anaconda, and as popular as the snake is, the very first result, and this just shows you how big this really is in the world right now, is Anaconda, the world's most popular data science platform. Python is very popular for data science. And this is all reworked since they went commercial. This looks very different than the way it used to. I remember them as Continuum IO and pushing that download right off the bat. So what you really want is the individual open source edition. And they give you a download link right there. And look down to see what's on the rest of the page, mostly marketing stuff. We'll hit download and see what happens. Scrolls you all the way down to your options. Now this is very interesting. See, Python 3.8. So this fleshes out part of the Python story that we're talking about here, because let's choose a color I haven't used before. I don't know, orange, there's just none. Red is good. I use that a little bit, but no, because I want to imply good. So this is green. This is a bright green. The Microsoft native store, put you on Python 3.9. Now that's really terrible. I don't want to do it like that. 3.9, and that's good. That's like the latest. We're getting 3.8 here. Not the worst thing in the world, a very popular version. But it is worth pointing out that Anaconda has slipped a version, a digit behind the Microsoft install. So we will proceed with the 64-bit version of Python 3.8. They don't even present 2 point something. The last time I did this, getting 2 point something was actually even an option that was sort of, presented to you on equal footing with 3 point something. And that's just kind of ridiculous today. And it's good to see that the website is reflecting that Anaconda, even though it's going all commercial and let's make money off of this amazing thing we did, fair enough, they are still offering the free version. So there's an installer. This installer is pretty quick to download. I remember this overall thing as something close to a 500 megabyte download that expanded to like a gigabyte or more install. And I'll do it for just me. It just keeps it contained. I never log in as anyone than myself anyway. It's the default choice, which means it's the most likely to keep working. And we take a look at the path. That might be important again in the future. In fact, I know it will because it's going to be the path to binaries and stuff. I am going to take a look. Stay flexible. It's going to require admin approval. I love the way these requesters switch around based on what you're trying to do. Did you see what happened there? Do you want to allow this app to make changes on your device? Verified publisher. So they went through the fuss to make it verified. I'm going to go ahead and do it this way. I want to see the path. Program data, see program data, Anaconda, and that'll be the path to binaries. But then everything in the future is going to need to know it has permissions to step out and go in that direction. And there's no back. I'm sort of locked into it. All right, I'll go this route. Why not? Add Anaconda 3 to system path environment. Register Anaconda 3 as the system Python 3.8. So that's really interesting. We have a choice now to make when you type Python from the command line to use Python 3.8 from here instead of 3.9 from over there. I uncheck that. It will allow other programs such as Python tools for Visual Studio, PyCharm. See? This is where the Visual Studio hooks come in. You have to register the system Python as 3.8 to keep that in sync with your Anaconda install, you see, so that Visual Studio can hijack Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab's, engine for a REPL, for a read, eval, print loop, a REPL environment. So that really belongs next to notebooks because the REPL environment is what you're getting with notebooks there. So to get those wonderful features in Visual Studio, which we're going to want to do in the future, I got to leave that checked and it turning red. This is a really good installer. I'm seeing a lot of good options here. If you're anyone who needs to do this stuff, this is going to benefit you. Refer anyone else to this because everyone's going through. There's fewer people. There's more people who are going to be using Python in the future than everyone who's ever used Python in the past put together. This is a bandwagon, and the minority of people are on it right now, and they're all going to be facing these options. And if you're doing it in 2021, this is the state of affairs. So they're saying it's not recommended to add Anaconda 3 to the system path environment variable. Instead, open Anaconda 3 with a Windows Start menu and select Anaconda 64-bit This add to path option makes Anaconda get found before previously installed software, but may cause problems requiring you to uninstall and reinstall Anaconda. Okay, so I'll take their recommended. These are such interesting issues and important. This probably is going to be a big, long install. And there might be interesting things to point out along the way. But while that's going on, and I've got the python.org site up, we might as well hit about, because it's important to know how this is different from other programming languages. Every language has its story, and the thing that's most impressive about Python, well, no, there's no single thing that's most impressive. It's a whole conglomerate of impressive things. But the fact that Python language has this foundation, the Python Software Foundation, a non-profit corporation that holds those intellectual property rights. They have those patents. You know, things that you typically want to know about such an organization is what it stands for. So there's the mission. The mission of the Python Software Foundation is to promote and advance the language, support and facilitate the growth of a diverse and international community of Python programmers. But yeah, what we really want is all the stuff that keeps it independent from being taken over by the influence of vendors over time. What makes it resistant to embrace and displace strategies, which it's fighting with all its life against right now, as Microsoft hires Guido van Rossum and buys GitHub and includes Linux with Windows. One of the things we're working our way up to really doing real soon is showing you how Linux is included with Windows. I know it's hard to imagine in your head, and most people will think, oh, then I will have Linux desktop software running side by side with Windows on my desktop. Like over here I could have Chrome under Linux, and over here I could have Chrome under Windows, and you could compare the two side by side. No, it's not really that way by default. I can make it that way. It's third-party stuff currently that makes it that way. That's one of my most popular videos on YouTube. I'll search for it, but it's about X server, how to get X server running on your desktop. So I don't want to waste any time on that. We'll just continue with the Anaconda install. Is it breeze? Oh, wow. Working with Python and Jupyter Notebooks is a breeze with PyCharm Pro, designed to be used with Anaconda. Download now. No. Okay, that's marketing. Completing Anaconda 3 64-bit setup, individual. Start the tutorial. Getting started. Helpful tips and resources. Refer back to them later. Okay, what the heck? Take their recommendation. Could it really be installed this quick? Probably not. Okay, they're showing us some resources. The installer is not here anymore, but this then is the real moment of truth. We hit here, JUP, Jupyter Notebook, Anaconda 3, right? This is not the huge install process that I remember. They really cleaned up their act quite a bit. I select Jupyter Notebook. You can see a browser comes up. This is Jupyter Notebook, of course. I'll do Hello World, but I want to start good habits. I'll show you Jupyter Notebook. This is one way to do it. So this is a Jupyter Notebook versus JupyterLab. Jupyter Lab. Let's see what comes up. Yeah, very interesting. There's one word. Okay, well then I'm going to look for the Navigator. Anaconda, we start typing Anaconda. And you can see some of the different options that are here that have been installed. And the main one that it's intended to go to is Anaconda Navigator. And that's what I'll do. There's some interesting things in here, but we'll go to Navigator. And I'll see if there's a way to pull up labs as opposed to Notebook. I usually hate pulling up Navigator because it's so much more heavyweight than all the other stuff that's going on. But it's a nice place to do things like manage virtual environments and stuff. So there's some interesting discussions coming up. And these are generic cross-platform, cross-the-ages kind of things. I'm not showing you stuff that's going to be fly-by-night fad or fashion tech here. When we start talking about virtual environments under Anaconda, it's the same virtual environment concept that exists under Python, and half the things out there under different names. It's just a way of rounding up your dependencies into one location. So here is the Anaconda Navigator, the way that most people go into this stuff who don't know they can just type Jupyter Notebook and sort of end run the whole process. So with Navigator, there is our lab icon. I thought that's how you, a little launch button underneath, so I got to scroll down. My performance is not so great. So you can see there that Navigator itself, this has the feel of a Java Swing user interface, or something that's struggling to make a native user interface that's designed to be cross-platform. There's Qt or something like it there. So I'll make my own icon for launching Jupyter Lab, but you can see here, oh, it's ugly in white. View. Presentation mode, no. Settings. Okay. Jupyter theme, Jupyter dark. I can't even stand to look at it in the white anymore. You see the general dark colors, and their dark theme goes perfectly well with my preferred workflow. So we've got Jupyter Notebook and Jupyter Lab side by side here after a fresh Anaconda install. We're going to do Hello World on both, and you saw how easy it was to pull up this screen. It's probably why Notebook might even still have more uptake than Lab in this day and age, but Notebook and Lab are pretty much identical, but Lab lets you do more, like setting a night mode right off the bat. There's something that Lab has over Notebook. So we'll do Hello World in each. I'm not going to change my directory, but you can see it drops you into your very standard home directory here. And for the sake of just a quick, successful Hello World in each. Now you'll remember the Hello World in Python over there in the commands prompt required print. Whoops, sorry. I've got a band-aid on one of my fingers, so typing is a little tricky, but anyway, print, oh, not pprint, that's something else. I'm getting ahead of myself. Print Hello World. That's the kind of print, and I'll increase the font size so you can see that. That's the kind of print Hello World that you're really used to seeing. But this is Jupyter Notebook, so you can just go, and it's implied. Have you ever seen an easier Hello World? Right? Okay, so let's do that in Jupyter Lab. Here, you have to hit Python 3 to start a notebook, and you can do print Hello World, or you can do just Hello World. See that? So I have now successfully completed this box here. And it's Python 3.8. That's kind of an issue. And if you want to ever investigate your environments or such, you can always just launch it on a shell, and the first thing it tells you is what Python version it is. So I know that you remember how to launch the normal one on the shell, which is just to go into the command line. Now let's test it. COM, there we go into the command line. I type Python, and we're going to see whether the Anaconda one has become the opposite. See, it offered to become the system one, but we remember from the download, it was Python 3.8 we downloaded from Anaconda. Here is the Microsoft provided 3.9 Python. So this is a downside of part of the Python story. On Windows, you do have to know the context under which your Python is running. And there is more than one context. Python can run in all kinds of ways, and these virtual environments I mentioned can contain these different Python ways into an environment. And so what is another environment? Well, we start typing Anaconda, and you'll see here is the Anaconda prompt. And that one is so important to me that I am going to pin to start. I need that. And there it is. And when we load that, you'll see a small font. I'll just jump ahead and just go into properties and change the font to 24. Unable to modify the shortcut. Yeah, okay, because it's a shortcut. Anyway, we got the effect that we wanted. And you can see this little base here. Those parentheses around something that comes before your prompt tells you what virtual environment you're in. And that is the base virtual environment for Anaconda. It's very difficult to tell that you're not in a normal DOS command prompt here, except for the fact it tells you there and it tells you there. Well, let's just type Python, and if I'm correct, this should be 3.8. 3.85. So there's 3.85 as installed by Anaconda, and there is 3.91 as installed by Microsoft. Side by side, able to coexist. So what makes an Anaconda prompt an Anaconda prompt? You can investigate these things and you can see for yourself, because it's actually quite important for one of my steps coming up. I'll drop it into my notes what I discover here. But if you right click on your shortcut and you go to more, and you go open file location, you can now right click on the original shortcut that's part of the you can do other things here. And look, you can drag Jupyter. I wish there was a Jupyter Lab there. I would drag that where I needed it to be. To get a Jupyter Lab icon for a keyboard shortcut is a little trickier than a Jupyter Notebook one. If it were notebooks, I would just drag this up there and have it done with. But anyway, that's a tangent. What I really want to do is find the Anaconda prompt, right-click on it, and go to Properties and see what it's doing. It's running out of your home path, so I don't need that. But this one that it has highlighted, the target, that's really interesting. I go over here to my notebook, and I put in my notes for today, this path. And what this means is that if I make a, if I use this command to start a command prompt, right? Because activate.bat, it's CMD. So this is a command prompt, and it's launching a certain script with a command prompt. And then this third parameter, I'll have to figure out what that is, but it's probably current working directory. You get an Anaconda prompt, and I would like an Anaconda prompt. I would like an Anaconda prompt on my unified Microsoft terminal, please. And that'll be a video coming up. I'll add that on to my to-do list here. So I just showed the Anaconda install, did a Jupyter Hello World, move that down to done. Done will probably not belong to a particular day in the future. I'll move this around so it makes more sense, but that was my to-do list from Wednesday. You can see yesterday, Thursday, I did a lot of the items from that to-do list, working through it, and I'm up to just about the WSL2 install to make the bottom box here possible, so I can get to a hello world on actual Linux subsystem for Windows, which is a big payoff here. Yes, a virtual machine. However, all the knowledge and know-how that you get on this path is transferable forever into the future. Not only does it let you do this giant prize end-to-end automation, a la servers, a la old school, a la all kinds of things. I'm going to show you how to do it with just Linux, but you can do it with like Python tools like Celery. This is where deployment things come into the picture. And there's some real high-end fields here, but I'm keeping it light and small, what one person can wholly manage and do. There's a lot that one person can really wholly and manage and do in this old school way, a lot more than most people give people credit for, and they all push them towards all these fancy schmancy managed web software as a service, platform as a service, but all you really ever need is infrastructure as a service, and a little bit of brains and a little bit of scaling the ambition level of your work to be right-sized. And then you can go from what I just showed you how to do, this Anaconda world, is you can now live lost by writing apps. Oh no, that doesn't work without it being orange. You can now make apps in a notebook that you press the big button for, those run, and you're in that sort of machine learning data science world that loves notebooks so much, sitting there clicking the button every time they want a script to run. And that sort of vibrating edge between those two worlds, rarely the two shall meet. But this is the point where I really love, and I am going to really make an emphasis of my video tutorial series, crossing over from the lost world to the Mickey Mouse's Saucer's Apprentice world, but doing it right without creating bit storms. I guess that's a good place to end. Thanks for joining me. Hope to see you again soon while I do that Frankenstein moment of breathing Linux life into an otherwise Windows world. And don't forget to subscribe.